It is the final decade of the 18th century, and Jamaica is the beating heart of Britain's sugar empire. The island's plantations stretch as far as the eye can see, endless rows of sugarcane swaying under the relentless Caribbean sun. But beneath that golden sea of crops, beneath the wealth pouring into British coffers, is a brutal truth. Jamaica is a land built on suffering. This is the world into which a boy enters, sometime around 1801. He is born on a sugar plantation in St. James Parish, near the bustling town of Montego Bay. His mother, a field slave, toils from sunrise to sunset, her body bent under the weight of labour, her hands raw from cutting cane. His father remains a ghost, just another man swallowed by the system of slavery that rips families apart without hesitation or remorse. From the moment he takes his first breath, Samuel's life is not his own. To be a child born into slavery on a Jamaican plantation is to know hunger, exhaustion and fear, even before you understand their names. From the moment Samuel can walk, he is put to work. The fields are no place for a child, but there are always other tasks: feeding livestock, carrying water, sweeping the overseer's quarters. The overseer, a man with the whip, his word is law, a missed task, a moment of rest, a look that lingers too long in defiance. Any of these can bring punishment. But Samuel Sharpe is lucky in a way that others are not. He is not sent to the fields to cut cane beneath the scorching sun. Instead, he is chosen to be a house slave. It is a different world inside the plantation owner's house. There are no sunburned backs, no endless rows of sugarcane, no sharp crack of the whip ringing through the air. But there are still chains, silent, invisible, but no less real. The chains of obedience, of submission, of knowing that you are property, not person. But Samuel is smart, observant. He listens, he watches. The planter class in Jamaica is made up of white men who live as kings in a world of excess. They drink imported wine, host extravagant parties, and speak of England as if it were paradise itself. But they also speak of something else: change. The world beyond Jamaica is shifting. There are whispers of abolition, of men in London debating whether slavery should be abolished. The British Empire has already outlawed the transatlantic slave trade, and though slavery itself is still legal, the cracks in the system are beginning to show. Samuel listens to these conversations, absorbing every word. He begins to understand something few of his fellow slaves can see: slavery is not invincible. There is another force shaping Samuel Sharpe's mind: the church. Christianity is spreading across Jamaica, carried by Baptist and Methodist missionaries who preach of salvation, of a world where all men are equal in the eyes of God. It is a dangerous message, one that plantation owners do not want their slaves to hear. An educated slave is a dangerous slave. A slave who believes he is equal to his master is a threat. But Samuel hears the words, he listens, and he believes. Unlike most slaves, he learns to read and write. He studies the Bible, drawing strength from its stories of liberation and justice. He attends prayer meetings, where enslaved men and women whisper their hopes for freedom between hymns. By the time he is a teenager, Samuel Sharpe is more than just a house slave. He is a leader among his people, a man with a voice that others listen to. And soon that voice will ignite a fire that Jamaica will never forget. Jamaica in the early 19th century is a land ready to explode. The fields, the plantations, the streets of Montego Bay, all of it simmers with tension, a pressure building beneath the weight of cruelty and injustice. Slavery has ruled here for generations, but change is in the air. And Samuel Sharpe, he is the man who will strike the match. By the time he reaches his 20s, Samuel Sharpe is no ordinary slave. He is well-spoken, well-read, and respected among his people. He moves between the worlds of the enslaved and the free, using his position as a trusted house slave to listen, learn, and spread ideas. His sharp mind and steady voice earn him a place as a deacon in the Baptist church, and through faith he finds his true power, not in the cane fields, not in rebellion with muskets and swords, but in words. He preaches of justice, of freedom, of a God who does not see masters and slaves, only men and women equal in his eyes. And the people listen. Sunday services become more than just places of worship. They become gatherings, meetings where messages are passed in hushed voices, where the idea of freedom is whispered like a prayer. But faith alone will not set them free. Beyond Jamaica, the world is changing. Across the Atlantic, England is in turmoil. In London, abolitionists fight to end slavery once and for all, pushing Parliament to take action. Sharpe follows the news closely, piecing together rumours, hoping, waiting. And then, in 1831, a spark, word reaches Jamaica that Britain is on the verge of freeing the slaves. The details are uncertain, but the meaning is clear. The days of the planters' rule are numbered, or at least that's what Sharpe believes. And if freedom is coming, why should they wait for their masters to decide when? Samuel Sharpe makes a choice. He will not die a slave, but this will not be a bloody rebellion. They cannot win in open war. The British army is strong, the planters well armed. If they take up swords and muskets, they will be crushed, as so many others have been before. So instead, he devises a different kind of resistance, one built not on violence, but on defiance, a strike. If the enslaved refuse to work, the sugarcane will rot in the fields. The plantation economy will collapse. The planters, desperate and weak, will have no choice but to grant their freedom. The plan is whispered from ear to ear, carried from one parish to the next. It spreads like wildfire. St. James, Trelawney, Hanover, St. Elizabeth, hundreds of men and women preparing to lay down their tools, to refuse the whip, to demand their rights. Christmas has always been a time of rest, a rare moment when the slaves are given a brief reprieve from their labour. It is the perfect cover, the perfect moment to begin. The plan is set, the people are ready. But there is something Samuel Sharpe does not know. This will not be a peaceful protest, because soon the fields of Jamaica will burn. It begins with fire. Montego Bay, December 27th, 1831. The sun sets over the cane fields, casting long shadows across the plantations. The air is thick with the scent of the Caribbean, salt, earth, and the ever-present smell of burning sugar from the refineries. But tonight, another fire will light the sky. The enslaved people of Western Jamaica have waited patiently, whispering the plan in secret, gathering their strength. The strike was supposed to begin quietly. No work, no blood, just a refusal to submit. But something shifts in the air, something uncontrollable, unstoppable. And then, somewhere in the hills of Kensington Estate, the first plantation goes up in flames. The fire is a signal. The planters wake to find the world they built, one of cruelty, of chains, of stolen labour, being devoured by an inferno. Smoke rises across St. James, spreading from plantation to plantation. At first there is no bloodshed. Sharpe's men take estates without killing, driving terrified overseers and masters from their homes. They cut down the tools of oppression, sugar mills, storehouses, everything that keeps the cycle of slavery turning. But the British are not slow to respond. The colonial authorities sound the alarm, the militia gathers, the planters rally, and then the killing begins. What started as a strike, as an act of defiance, becomes war. Across Western Jamaica, thousands rise. They outnumber their masters 10 to 1, but they lack the firepower, the training, the cold steel of the British Empire. The militia, well armed and ruthless, descends upon the rebels like a thunderbolt with muskets and bayonets. The British send warships to Montego Bay, cannons at the ready. Within days the rebellion turns into a massacre. By the first week of January, the revolt is crushed. The plantations are saved, the fires extinguished. But the blood of the enslaved stains the soil. And Sharpe, he does not flee. They find him in hiding, betrayed, captured, shackled in the very chains he sought to break. He is taken to Montego Bay, thrown into a cell beneath the courthouse. The planters demand vengeance. Over 500 rebels are executed, hanged in the town squares, shot in the fields, their bodies left to rot as warnings. The British, fearing more uprisings, make an example of every man and woman who dared to rise against them. And at the centre of it all is Samuel Sharpe. They drag him before a court in April 1832. There is no real trial, no hope of mercy. His fate is sealed before he even speaks. Death. On May the 23rd, they march him to the gallows in Montego Bay, the crowd gathering to witness the death of a man who dared to dream of freedom. But Sharpe does not beg. He does not weep. He stands tall, the weight of history resting on his shoulders. And before the noose tightens around his neck, he speaks words that will echo through time. I would rather die upon yonder gallows than live in slavery. The British killed Samuel Sharpe that day, but they could not kill his cause. News of the rebellion shook England, the brutality of the crackdown, the sheer desperation of the enslaved to be free. These were things Parliament could no longer ignore. Less than 2 years later, in 1834, Britain abolished slavery in its empire. Samuel Sharpe did not live to see it, but he had already won. Today, his name stands among Jamaica's national heroes. Statues rise in his honour, his face is printed on banknotes, his story told in classrooms. But his greatest legacy? It is in the land itself, no longer a colony, no longer a nation of masters and slaves, but free.